professor with NITE. NITE University and the NITE Institute of Architecture, Mangalore, or NIA, as we are fondly called, are honored to partner with Design Quotient Labs to conduct this NATA workshop for aspiring architects. NITE University, in the spirit of the new education policy, is rapidly growing into an interdisciplinary space where students and educators from various fields learn from each other, working together to solve some of society's biggest problems. The university has, ever since its inception, reached out and worked with local and regional communities to better people's lives. In the same philanthropic spirit of our university, NIA has partnered with DQ Labs for the last few years to provide these training sessions to students from the region and beyond. A small step towards helping you achieve your dreams of becoming an architect. As a developing country, both rural and urban India are witnessing unprecedented growth and require your help in designing and building this great nation. I would like to thank the university and DQ Labs for coming together and offering this opportunity for students to be better prepared to take the National Aptitude Test, which is being conducted in a new format. Thank you. Over to you, DQ Labs.
Thank you so much, Professor Arun. Thank you so much, Professor Arun. Just a second. All right. So from everyone here, what I've done is I've shared a link in the chat window. So I would like all of you to click on this chat or on this link and create your account if you do not have it already. If you do have it, it would be great if you could sign in. Now, what I will do is, could someone please give me a screen sharing? Right. So this is a very critical step so that everyone has access to DQ Edge, and it is important that everyone has access so that y'all can access some free mock tests and y'all can also relate to what is being taught here. From DQ Labs, my name is Dion, and I'm one of the management at DQ Labs, and I thank all of you for coming here and participating in this specific workshop. This is called the NATA PowerPrep workshop, which is specifically done to help all of you crack the NATA exam with a good score. The NATA second attempt is on 11th of July, that's Sunday. And a lot of the students have not really performed very well in the first attempt. And, you know, and I was talking to Professor Vinod and from NIA, and he said, you know what, we should give the opportunity to a lot of students and it should be available to them for free. So thank you, Professor Vinod, for organizing this, and thank you, NIA, taking this initiative, the brilliant initiative from NIA. We're very happy to partner with them, and we've seen their commitment to good architecture and good architecture education over the last so many years since their inception. So thanks so much. From here, we have the team from DQ Labs. We have a team from a faculty. We have Meghna Iyengar, who handles the entire content of DQ Labs, and she's also one of our star faculty. So she's going to be taking you through all of this for the next session, for the next couple of hours. And we also have Professor Surinder, who's faculty, who's going to be talking about, so Meghna is going to be talking about the aptitude aspect of DQ Edge and how you can prepare for the NATA exam over the next couple of days. And um, Professor Surender would be talking about the creative aspect on how to handle the creative aspect and face that. As far as what we're going to cover today, we're going to cover the types of questions that you can expect. Also, the questions, the NATA exam is something which is very unpredictable. There will be questions which, no one can expect, not even us. So, uh, when you get questions like those, how do you handle those? That's the second aspect that would be handling here. The third aspect is time management. And time management is another very critical aspect. And the fourth aspect is a strategy. How do you strategize based on your strengths, maximize your score, right? So these are the four things. So please do sign in to DQ Edge. DQ Edge is the learning platform of DQ Labs. So you can click on login. When you log in, you can either log in by Google or Facebook. So we prefer to do it by Google, but you all can choose whichever one, Google or Facebook, or even create your account. So I already have my account here. Once you do that, you will come into this particular page. Some of you may be asked to sign up with your sign up to get access and OTP verification so that we know that you're not a bot. Once you sign up, you will come onto this particular page and you need to click on NATA. Okay, make sure NATA is checked and then you can click on let's begin. So that's how you start off with DQ Edge. And once you come down, there are two sections. There is a learn section on NATA. Uh, and if you don't get NATA, you can just click a drop down and you'll find NATA here. And there are two sections. There's a learn section and there's a test section. So these are the two critical sections here. In the test section, you can go to the past year papers and you'll get access to the NATA April 2021 paper, and you'll get a few other papers as well. You can also click on the NATA mock test and you will get the 2021 strategy test for free. This is one strategy test and the second one. So Meghna and Surender would take you through their part of the preparation, and then they would also ask you to do these tests. All right. These tests will help you derive a strategy. Now, I'm going to, before they get into the details, what I'm going to do is just show you um, one of the things that is very important while you are taking the test. It is very critical that you handle a test in this manner. All right. So say this is a question given to you. You have the question with four answer options. Now there are only three ways in which you can answer this question. So the question is identify the correct top view from the given 3D object. So you're looking from the top. All right. And so when I before I even look at the answer options, I know what this is going to appear like, right? So that is me using my knowledge. If I'm not able to visualize that, I look at the answer options and then I select my answer. So that is the second option, which is called elimination, where you're eliminating from the answer choices. And if by both methods I'm unable to come up to the right answer, I will randomly select any of these answers and I'll move on. So let's say, from my understanding, the answer is C. So I'm going to click on C. And do you see these three buttons here? It's asking me which is my predominant method of answering this question. So here, predominantly, I answer this question using my knowledge. So I'm clicking knowledge. Whereas this one say I have no clue how to answer this, so I'm just randomly guessing. And this one say I'm actually looking at the answer options and then I'm figuring out the answers. Where one, two, three, four, five. So according to me, um, my answer would be five triangles. All right. And I'm going to eliminate from the answer choices. So That would be my answer. So please keep this in mind. It is very important when answering every question, because at the end of it, you will get a study strategy, um, which will tell you how you can do better. All right. Uh, so over to Meghna to take it off from here. Once again, thank all the students who are here. I thank NITE Institute of Architecture, and I thank the DQ Labs faculty for taking the trouble to come here and share their knowledge. I'm going to stop my screen share for now. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to type it in the chat box. All right. All right. Meghna, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank, thank you, Dion. Good evening, guys. I hope I'm audible to all of y'all. Just a second, I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah. So if you all can hear, please type in yes in the chat box. Fantastic.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Thank you for taking time and attending the workshop. So I know as Dion already mentioned, the exams on Sunday. So I'm assuming all of y'all are prepared well enough to take up the second attempt. So before we get into the uh, preparation strategy or the expected questions and all that, I just want to give a general brief on how the pattern was for the first attempt and what kind of questions or what topics were majorly asked, so that accordingly we can expect certain amount of changes with the same, or if there are any new topics that could be expected, we can discuss that as well. Okay, to start off with the overview of today's workshop by myself and Surendra sir would be to discuss the expected questions in general for the entire NATA paper, and what kind of alternative questions can be expected, plus the time management and the strategies for the exam coming up. Okay, so like I mentioned, the first attempt paper actually had these following categories, or the subjects were majorly part of the question paper. Now, the brochure that was released was clearly, like, it was very vague and ambiguous, because they just mentioned that there might be questions from logical or analytical ability, there would be visual questions and basic geometry or physics questions. So it was a complete, zero idea for all of us. We just had some vague idea as to what kind of questions would turn up, right? So I've kind of put up the weightage of the topics from the first attempt. Now, as you can see, something that was very, very surprising, at least for us as faculties as well, was till this first attempt, there was no English part of the NATA paper, at least since 2017. Once they included mathematics, there was no English, but there were a lot of English questions asked. And another thing that I feel what took everybody by surprise were the memory or the observation related questions and the riddle section. So we'll be discussing a few examples and try to understand how those questions can be solved. Okay, that will come up next. But yeah, so like you can see, the major weightage goes to the English part, communication ability, and then we have the mental ability. Lastly, architectural awareness and general knowledge. So this has been the same since the beginning, because all the architecture exams has a lot of architectural awareness and general knowledge questions, which Surendra sir will be discussing later on. So I'll be completely discussing the first 70 to 80% of the paper, which would be all the reasoning and aptitude section. So feel free to ask any questions or doubts that you guys have. If I'm being fast, please stop me and let me know. I can repeat the thing. Okay. So getting into the expected questions part. So again, I'm going to keep the first attempt as the reference and discuss questions and the topics with relevance to that, plus what can be expected, in the second attempt that was not part of the first attempt. Now, as you can see, major categories that were mentioned in the brochure, as well as what we saw from the first attempt paper, was there were a lot of questions which had logical reasoning required. So logical reasoning is a general term that I'm using. Anything and everything where a lot of logic or mental ability is used is what I've put up there, but not necessary. It should just be direct questions like blood relations or coding, decoding. It has more to do, not just those. Okay, we'll discuss them as well. And then the next thing is visuals. So when it comes to visuals, visuals has been a part of architecture entrance exam, let it be NATA or JE as well. Visuals has had a lot of weightage throughout. So that was one. And then next thing was English. Like I mentioned earlier, English comprehension, surprisingly, comprehension questions were put up, but they did, make certain changes, and they made it a little trickier, where it was not just comprehension. They kind of included a lot of grammar concepts also into those, reading comprehension questions. Okay, and then basic science. Now, basic science, of course, they initially the entire syllabus of mathematics, like 11th and 12th syllabus of mathematics, was part of the NATA syllabus, but that kind of completely changed because they didn't give any questions related to the 11th and 12th syllabus. It was very, very simple, and a lot of geometry related questions were asked. So that, and along with that, when it comes to the physics section, of course, it's said like basic physics, but if you've attempted the first attempt paper, or if you've come across the questions, you can see it was more of not exactly the 11th, 12th physics topics, but it would be somewhat like, how do you put it, like environmental science kind of thing, atmosphere related or some basic chemical related. So it's not exactly physics, not necessary that it should be physics. Okay. So it's a combination of basic, like up till 10th, whatever knowledge we have on science, that should be sufficient enough to answer. So that format of questions were asked. So I'm kind of hoping it would still remain the same, because it will not get into an advanced level. Even the number of questions, if you see, were just 5 questions out of 125. So which were like 1 mark questions. Okay, so it would still be to the same level. Okay, and then comes the quantitative aptitude part. So this was nowhere mentioned directly in the brochure or the pattern of the exam, but this is something that we've noticed even before, not just the 2021 attempt. Even before that, if you actually analyze the question paper, so when we say quantitative ability is the section where you have basic math questions like time, speed, distance, or percentages, averages. So these kind of questions will come into the quantitative aptitude. So this is a standard topic or a category that has been there throughout in all the NATA papers. So even when there was mathematics, when there were like 15 to 20 questions of math questions put up, we still had questions related to area, volume, or percentage related questions. So I would really suggest, if you guys have already you've already prepared, but if you still have doubts, I think it's better you guys can go through the formulas once and just get a quick glance about profit and loss or percentages and all these formulas, so that in case if you do come up with these questions come up in your paper, you should be able to answer them. Okay, so that's quantitative. Lastly, the memory base. So this completely took everybody, it surprised all of us, because nobody expected that they would give an image for 30 seconds and ask students to observe the image and ask multiple questions related to. So I think these were like 3-mark questions. That was another thing. There were around 10 questions of memory based type. So this time, it's really we cannot say definitely that they would have the same pattern of the question, but they can always make changes with the same thing. Like not necessary it has to be the same format of the first attempt, right? Because as they're trying to make it as difficult as possible, and they're keeping it like a proper aptitude test, so the same concepts would still remain, but the type of questions or how tricky they're going to make the questions can always change, right? So that is what is the unexpected or alternative expected questions that we can look for. Okay, so now discussing about the logical reasoning part. So logical reasoning is generally categorized into verbal, non-verbal, analytical, and riddles. So riddles is something that we additionally added based on the first attempt analysis. Now, verbal section are majorly the topics which are like, blood relations, coding, decoding, series and sequences. So these are very common. Any kind of aptitude or IQ test that you take, verbal reasoning is very commonly expected. So these questions were also part of the paper, first attempt paper, and even before the NATA pattern did have verbal reasoning questions. So riddles also would fall into the verbal category. So for this attempt, you can majorly expect questions like arrangements. Okay, like this is a suggestion I'm giving. So in case if you guys are not that very well prepared, please go ahead and revise once again, because you have one more date left. See, blood relations or coding, decoding, or these direction and distance, these are all common. So it's very direct. They cannot, they can only make the question difficult, but the concept or the method of solving those questions will still remain the same, right? But when it comes to arrangement, seating arrangement is what we call, but not necessary. It should be like, literal making people sit around a circle or things like that. General arrangement questions, it can always be tricked as difficult as possible. Like for example, if I include multiple aspects for an arrangement question, like rather than saying there are 10 people in a room and, they took up a test and you're supposed to arrange them in a, give them ranks between 1 to 10. So it's just looking at their marks and arranging them, right? But if I include the concept of subjects, or if I include the concept of multiple sections in that college, so what's happening, it's not just about the marks in the rank list. There is another element that is included, right? So I can make a very simple arrangement question and take up a very simple arrangement question and trick it as difficult as possible, right? And because the NATA pattern has 1 marker, 2 marker, and 3 marker, you can always expect these kind of difficult questions for 2 marker or 3 marker, not just a 1 mark question. And another advantage of these kind of arrangement questions is that there can be more than one question asked for one single arrangement. Like how the reading comprehension part works, we have one comprehension and like 4 or 5 questions put up below that. Similarly, one arrangement, 2 or 3 questions. So it kind of helps you with the time also. Like generally, we suggest students to try and solve the question within a minute or maximum 1.5 minutes, considering not the total duration, but per question basis. So what will happen if the arrangements are difficult? Definitely we'll take more time, right? So if you have like 2 or 3 questions for the same arrangement, it's convenient. So you can spend more time in solving the arrangement and then answer the following questions very quickly, right? So that would be something that I would really suggest that you guys brush up, the arrangement related. So you can call it arrangement question, you can call it puzzle type, however you put it, because it is somewhat like a puzzle, right? So that's one. Now coming to the non-verbal part is slightly different from visuals. So visual questions are a proper section where we come across questions like mirror water images or counting and all this, right? How different is that from non-verbal? So when we say non-verbal reasoning is majorly these jigsaw puzzles, or you have numbers, uh, represented as some symbols, and they have some math calculation put up. So to put it in simple terms, most of us, like all of us, use WhatsApp, and these days WhatsApp forwards are very common, right? So there are these images and things that gets forwarded in general. They'll just say it has some symbols and flowers put up, and there are, this is equal to so and so, this is equal to so and so, and finally there is a question mark, right? So that's a visual puzzle. So you're trying to what do you say? consider those symbols or the objects in the image to either numbers or letters and do the calculation and then put it up. So here you can't really say because I'm using numbers and calculations over there, it is relevant to math, right? So it is more of visual, like how observant you are, how good you are in figuring out the logic in the given image. That's majorly the concept of solving, right? So that's why it is put into the logical reasoning category. So that is one pattern. The other one would be like rotation related questions. This is very commonly seen, and you can expect it in your paper as well. So it's like they give you an image, an object, whatever it is, and it can be 2D or 3D. That's what I meant. The options would be different rotations of the same given 2D image or the 3D object. So because you have multiple select questions as one of the pattern, it is always, you need to be very, very careful when you're answering these kind of questions, especially the rotation related questions, because all 4 options could be right. So if you make one mistake, so firstly, okay, before I carry forward, I just want to understand, are you guys clear with the concept of the different types of questions that you get to attempt? NAT, MCQ, MSQ? Yes, no? Okay, great. That's good.
Meghna, I think
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
it would be good if you could just show 1 or 2 examples of each,
These questions, oh, the
Yeah.
NAT and stuff, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
show that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just,
Yeah, you carry on, but probably just show that at some point.
yes, I'll definitely show it on Edge. I can show it to you guys. But the reason why I'm asking, why I put up that question here is, see, NAT is where you just need to enter the answer, any numerical number, right? But MCQ is where more than 4 options are given and only one correct answer is there. MSQ is it can have more than one option, right? So that's the concept. But what we always get confused, like one confusion that's commonly there is, if out of A, B, C, D, A and B are the correct answers, let's say when I mark the answer, I'm going to choose B and C. Students have, like all of us have this confusion as to option B has been marked right. Why am I not getting marks for that? So you will not get any full marks if you get even one option wrong for an MSQ. Okay, so you need to mark the exact same number of options and the exact same options which are correct for the question. Only then you will be rewarded with the full marks of that particular question. If it is, let it be 1 mark, 2 mark, or 3 marks. Okay, but unlike MSQ, we also have something called as preferential choice questions. What happens in preferential choice question is, if you have, I think all of you all would know, like these design principle related questions that keeps coming up, it is put into the category of preferential choice. So you'll have like 10, 15 options. They expect you to mark only 4 or 5 out of it, right? So when they say choose 4 or 5 options, it can be any of out of those 15. Now, depending on the choice that you have made, the marks will accordingly vary. Let's say out of the 5 correct answers, you just chose 3. So the other 2 that you marked were wrong. So you will still get marks for those 3 options, but that's not the case in MSQ. Understood? So there's a clear difference. So please be careful whenever you're attempting any kind of MSQ question. Be very, very sure about what answer you're marking, and whichever options are right, please mark them. Don't mark anything additionally, and don't miss out on the rest as well. So that's one thing that you need to be careful on. So next thing, coming to analytical type. So analytical type is very, very common skill that is tested throughout your paper. So we might not directly come across the questions like that happened with the first attempt paper. You might not have questions where they ask you to analyze a particular statement or analyze a passage and then ask you to answer. So that's not the case that's happening. It's usually like how you attempt, like reading comprehension. Reading comprehension was commonly there, like there were like 4 or 5 comprehension questions that was given, right? Now there are different ways of answering any particular comprehension question. Okay. Some would be like how we do in our schools, very simple. You just have the direct question given, pull up the answer and write down here or mark the correct choice, right? But the other format is to try and understand what the passage is trying to say or whatever the author is trying to convey. And based on the analysis, you get to answer the questions. This can easily be related to this situational judgment also. This is a term that you would come across. I mean, it was mentioned in your brochure, NATA 2021 pattern brochure. It clearly said situational type questions can be expected. So what they mean by situational type, or what they exactly, are trying to test you out of that particular skill, is that how good you are in analyzing things. Like analysis can be done by any of us, but let's say like myself and you guys are sitting and analyzing a particular paragraph, not necessary that our analysis should match, right? So because I might be analyzing it from my perspective, like whatever knowledge I have about that paragraph or about the content that is being discussed, and you guys will have your own version of it, right? So this is where there's a mismatch. This is where the answers will go wrong, because after the analysis, if they give us a form to answer a few questions, then definitely our answers might not match because we have different perspectives of looking at it, right? So a key point to answer analytical questions properly and to not get them wrong is to always be or always look at the questions from a general perspective, never be biased. So keep aside all your opinions and whatever prior knowledge you have about the content that you're reading aside, and think as if you're reading this for the first time. You have no idea about it. You're just going to approach it from a general point of view. So that's very, very important when you're doing analytical questions. Again, this is directly related to situational type. So situational type, slightly the same concept with a slight change, is that they'll clearly give you a situation and then they put up the question in such a way that what would you do? Like, for example, let's say you're at a restaurant with your family or your friends, and you're there to dine in, and you're waiting for the waiter to come give you the menu. But on the way, when he or she is walking, something happens, and the plate which is there in the other person's hand just falls, and it kind of creates a mess at the right next to you. There's another table with the family, and if there's a problem with them, so what should you do in that situation? Like, how would you sort out, or something like that? The question might come up. So there are different versions again, right? People might try to ignore it and sit quietly, and somebody might want to go resolve and help that person over there. If the family is overreacting, maybe you can get involved or not get involved. So depending on what the options are given, each one of us will have our own version of answer, right? But what is the most appropriate thing that you need to do, irrespective of whether you like or you don't like? What is the most appropriate thing that you need to do is what you have to mark the answer as. See, I agree there can never be two extremes to these situational questions. It can never be like it's either black or white kind of a thing. It always depends on the situation and how right it is for everybody around there to sort out that particular issue, right? So that's why I'm saying not the definite answer, it's most appropriate answer for that particular scenario, because the answer varies. The answer or the approach that you need to take will vary depending on the situation given to you. Understood? So that is very, very important when it comes to analytical and situational question. Now, the reason why I'm talking so much about situational question is there weren't any direct questions as such in your first attempt. So you can definitely expect it in the second attempt. Maybe not on a big scale where they give you a situation and answer. They will somehow, induce this analytical or situational skill that they want to test in you in some other form of questions. It could be simple MCQs or simple analytical questions of 1 mark or 2 mark, and they can still test you on it. So please be very, very careful and be unbiased when you're answering analytical questions. Okay. Now, lastly, the riddles part. So this is something which took all of us at a surprise. So riddle questions was another unexpected format for one more reason, because they didn't make it into an MCQ. There was no MCQ, MSQ option. It just turned out to be like a fill in the blanks thing, where The question was given and you guys were expected to enter the answer. That's where the difficulty, difficult part was. Because if you have the options, majorly the options will kind of give you the hints, and it is easy for us to at least get into a zone. Okay, the options are in this range. So my thought process and calculation should also remain in this range. It gives us a hint. But when you don't have that, it's very difficult for us to just enter the answer, and we might not even know whether we are right or wrong, right? One advantage is there's no negative marking for the NATA paper. So it's just, you get it wrong, then it's just 0, right? So that's the thing. The next thing for riddles. So we'll just discuss a few. One second. Yeah. So I just wanted to give you a few tips that you need to keep in mind when you're doing riddle questions. So in case if you come across them, it'll be convenient for you guys to answer. So one common mistake that we do when we solve riddle questions is that we always look for logical answers. Like we try to solve the riddle questions logically rather than making it, rather than looking at it as for what it is. We just try to involve some kind of logic and try to solve the question. So please don't do that. Okay. So the 4 points that you need to keep in mind when you're doing riddle questions is that first, challenge your assumptions. So as you can see in the example, there was one soldier who had a brother that was wounded in battle, but the wounded man did not have a brother. How could that be? Now, can you guys try and answer this question? The first example. Not bad. The soldier was a female. That's the correct answer. Okay. See, the obvious thing that what we would connect to is, as they're saying a soldier had a brother, we'll just assume both of them are males. Not necessary. So if I say, he is my brother, then I won't be his brother, right? So I'll be his sister. So there's a change in the gender, right? So these kind of by default assumptions that we make has to be taken out. So look out of what you always assume to be true. So that's the challenger assumptions part. Next thing, watch for the wordplay. So can you guys try to answer the second example? What can be seen in the middle of March and April that cannot be seen at the beginning or end of either month? Good, I'm getting a lot of answers. The letter R. Okay, not so for questions like these where it's pretty direct, there's no confusion and things like that, you need to always read through twice, like try to understand. So between March and April there's no other month, so what are they trying to mean? Then relate it to the letters. Okay, it could be letters, for this case it is about the words, but in place of letters there can also be numbers, not necessary it has to just be words alone. Whatever it is, whenever the questions are very direct, try to look for the other versions of how you can relate to the given question. Okay. Next thing, think metaphor. This is another type of puzzles that you can come across. Now, please give me answers to. Okay, good. Cloud is the answer. So when the minute we read the question saying that I fly without wings, I cry without eyes, what am I? So first thing that pops into our head would be, okay, what are the things that fly? So birds will fly, and then you have an aeroplane or a helicopter, and all these things will come into your head. But that how will I relate it to crying without eyes? Right? So that's where you need to not look at the literal meaning of what they're trying to say and try to think what else can be related to both these terms. Okay, something that flies as well as, it cries as in it has water in it, right? So that way, when you relate both of it, connect both the terms, and then think of the answer, it would be easier. Okay. The last one, misdirection. So this is a very common type of riddle that you can come across. I think the very first question in the first attempt paper was this. The question was John's mother had 4 sons. The name of the first 3 sons were Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. What was the fourth son's name? So it was a very direct question. Everybody would have thought, okay, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, the next answer has to be Wednesday. But the obvious answer is, it starts off saying John's mother had 4 sons. So the fourth son has to be John, right? So the same thing goes with this one also. Misdirection is also another common technique for the riddle questions. Okay, so please keep these things in mind. Depending on what format of question comes, it could be that they're trying to challenge your assumptions, like test something that's very basically accepted by all of us, or it could be given in the form of metaphors, or it can also be like misdirection type. So whatever format of riddles are given, accordingly apply the logic. Okay, so that was about logical reasoning part. Next comes the visual aptitude. So visual aptitude, the major topics or categories that you need to look out for would be counting related questions. Now, when I say counting questions, counting can be either for 2D or 3D. It can be count the number of straight lines or count the triangles, quadrilaterals, any kind of counting questions. Count the number of cubes. That's also another type. Mirror and water images, of course, all of you all would be familiar with it. Mirror and water images is another type. Orthographic views is the next topic. So when it comes to orthographic views, they give you an object and ask you to identify the top view, side view, or the left or right view, front view. So this is another category under orthographic views. Merging and rotations. So this is something new, which we can expect for the upcoming attempt. So when we say merging, it's mostly like you'll have multiple 2D shapes, which is given, and they ask you to identify the correct shape when you put all these bits and pieces together. Or the same thing can be done with respect to 3D objects as well. So you have different parts of the objects, how would it look when it is put out? So for now, whatever I'm explaining now, all these different types of questions and different expected and unexpected questions are actually part of the mock test, which initially Dion showed on the screen, which I'll be again showing it to you guys once I'm done. So you can actually practice them, like you can go through them and try to understand these kind of questions are there, so that, and be familiar with it. So see, there's no guarantee that it will come, but in case if it comes, you should be able to answer them, right? So for that purpose. And rotations, like I mentioned, in case of non-verbal rotations also, they give you how the rotation questions would work would be that like, unlike the, I'll show you an example. Yeah, something like this. So for this particular image, this is a very simple image. Your options would have different rotations of the same hexagon with a square and 2 circles in it. So you are to, it looks very simple. So it's very easy for you to identify the rotations, but the rotation not necessarily should be like a proper 90-degree or 180-degree rotation, right? It can be at different angles. So you have to be very, very careful. So when you're identifying them, you need to also consider the elements inside the hexagon. It's not just the outer limb. Okay, that's one. So these are few examples that I pulled out from the visual question. So this, you can see the one here at the bottom. This is the merging question. See, like you see here, if I give you this particular image and ask you to come up with an figure, I'm pretty sure like we'll have different answers, right? So your MCQ will kind of make it easier for you, where you will have the options given. You just need to work around those 4 options and choose the correct one. So generally, this is something that I suggest to all my students as well. Use elimination method when you're trying to do visual questions. Okay, very importantly, the reason is it's possible for us to have different versions of answers, like let it be, merging of 2D, 3D images and all that. So when you have multiple choices, like multiple versions of for the same figure, your options, you can definitely or clearly say, okay, these would not be the correct ones, right? It is easy for us to eliminate the ones. Now, for example, in this particular mirror image question, so you can eliminate the ones that would definitely not be right. Now, for example, the option B. So when you take option B, this particular symbol, when it is mirrored to the other side, definitely this horizontal line is going to be extended to the other side, not like this, right? So I can eliminate it. So choose the wrong ones, eliminate them, and then work along and fix the correct answer. That would be very helpful. Okay. Next thing is development. So development questions is also another one where you have a net or a development for particular 3D solid is given. They expect you to identify the correct 3D solid. It's like basically using papers. You use newspapers or any kind of papers and put out a particular solid, right? So that development is given. You need to identify the correct 3D object. That's the next type. Now, I want you guys to actually answer this one. How many circles are there in this particular image? Excuse me. Can you guys answer? How many circles are there in the figure here? Not bad. One is the correct answer. Okay, because the complete circle is only the first one that you see. Rest all are not full circles, right? So this is how they'll try to trick you. The minute you read the question, like count the number of circles in the given image, don't start off counting all of them because the rest are not circles. They're, either semicircles or just half, like they're the curves. They're not complete circles, right? So this is something that you need to keep in mind when it comes to visuals. So I think I've discussed mostly all different types of questions. So counting related questions, then you have mirror water images, development, and merging. Merging is something that you can expect, which was not part of the first case. It is possible for them to, ask in the second attempt. Okay, that's about visuals. Next comes English. So English, quickly, comprehension was something that was very directly given. Like you had 20 questions of comprehension questions. But what they actually did was, if you see the questions under each comprehension, they kind of gave you questions to test the grammar capability. And also you had questions where they tested the vocabulary, strength of individuals under that comprehension itself. So usually when we say English, we keep comprehension questions separate, and then we'll add additional grammar questions or idioms and vocabulary and all that, right? But here they kind of fit in all those different types within that 20-25 questions itself. So what they did, they picked a word from the passage itself and they asked you, to identify antonym or synonym or plurals related to it. So that was testing your vocabulary. Or there was a statement given and they wanted you to represent that meaning of that entire statement in a word. So that also tests your vocabulary thing. And then grammar is all these fill in the blank type questions that you come across under the comprehensions. So the fill in the blanks, not necessarily, it should be like you've put a word and it fits in, like it not like a meaning kind of a thing. It could also be basic grammars, like it can be a noun or a pronoun or a conjunction, or this also can be tenses, past tense, present tense. So all those would be the major things that you need to look out for when you're answering comprehension questions. Okay, so that would be about English. Now the next part, coming to basic science and mathematics. So like I mentioned earlier, environmental science and basic physics. I put it to, separately because physics is more like, a lot of physics terminologies could be expected uh, up till 10th grade. Very clearly up till 10th grade. Okay. Not the advanced physics that we learn in 11th and 12th standard. It won't be a difficult task because you've already learned it for your 11th and 12th. It might be easy for you to answer, but still the level of questions that you can expect would be generally on the, 10th up till 10th standard level. Okay. Now, geometry was very prominently asked. When I say geometry, concepts related to triangles, different polygons, basic theorems, angle related content. So in case if anything is left out, you can always revise them. All these things that I'm discussing and explaining now, all these contents are available on DQH, which I'm going to show. You guys can refer to it. So if you have anything else to refer to, you can just additionally look through that. So that's about basic geometry. Angles, polygons, area and volume related concepts. Okay, so these are all the things when it comes to geometry. Quantitative aptitude, like I mentioned earlier, percentages, age related questions. Okay, so when I say um, don't panic, like if you have not gone through these things, this is not to scare you guys because there's only one day left. It's not something that is not solvable by you guys, okay, because you guys have done mathematics in 11th and 12th, so it's pretty much easy for all of y'all to solve it. The reason I'm telling this is when you look at the question, you'll be surprised if you're not aware of it, right? So please expect them. It might be a very easy level, okay, like percentage questions or age related questions is nothing but just linear equations. So it's pretty simple. If you understand what is asked in the question, read them and try to know what they're asking and what is the data given to you, accordingly choose the linear equation and solve, right? So those kind of basic aptitude questions. And mensuration, area, volume, this is some, definitely you will have at least 2 questions. Okay, because mensuration related questions have been asked from a really long time in the NATA paper. It was part of the first attempt as well. So please go through all the area volume formulas for all the objects without fail, so that any kind of question related to that, like either to calculate the distance or find the length, perimeter, circumference, these are all very common. Okay, so that's about physics, basic science and mathematics. Lastly, coming to the memory based questions. Now, up till now, whatever topics that I discussed, those can be put into the category of 1 marker, 2 marker, or even 3 marker if required. Okay, I think riddles were 3 mark questions, but memory based were strictly under the 3 mark questions. So there were like 10 questions which was asked for 3 marks each. Okay, so the type of questions that you can expect under the observation is, they majorly, like very commonly, it can be to count the objects that are there visible in your image. Then the next thing they can ask you to identify is the color. So one point that I would like to mention over here is, because the pattern of your questions are varying, as in it's not like all of them has to be MCQ, right? So what they can do, color related question can be that they can make it into an odd one type thing. Like I can pick out like 4 or 5 colors that was there part of the image and add something additional and ask find the odd one out, like find the odd color out. Or I can particularly give you an object that was part of the image, show it to you without any color and ask you to enter the color that was in the image, right? So it is majorly twisting. But when you're observing the image or the picture for 30 seconds, you should always keep these things in mind. That's why it has been listed out here. First thing is to count down the given objects. It can be people over there, it can be some elements or vegetables, fruits, whatever is there, always do the counting. So when you're doing the counting, of course, like it's difficult for you to keep everything in your head, right? So you'll always have a rough sheet. Write it down. Write it down does not mean you literally, neat and thing. Just scratch it. So for your own reference. Then observe all the color patterns. Color patterns, even there, like see the obvious ones, questions will not come out as well. Like they won't ask you if the entire image has a lot of black in it, they're not going to ask you a question related to black. They'll try to ask something that is unnoticed, like which is possible for us to be ignored, right? So note down those colors. And if there are any different patterns, like how many different patterns were there in the total image. Like if they give you a leaf question was actually there in the first attempt. So if you see, there were different types, like different patterned leaves. Few were tilted towards left, few were tilted towards right. So it means there is a difference between them as well, right? So make sure you note down those. And direction related will usually work out when they give you these park scene, or if they give any kind of plan which has multiple places, like it has a gas station, and then it has a school, church, and all that. It's easy for us to include direction related questions using that plan. So you have to look at the plan. There are multiple places over there. You need to answer like in which direction is the church with respect to the school. So that's how they can include the direction. So note down that as well. Then spot the differences, of course, like looking at comparing two images, you have to spot the differences. And so majorly counting questions can be given as NATs, as in no options, no MCQ, you have to enter the answer. So please be prepared for that. Odd one out, like I said, odd one out can be either color related, or it can be pattern related, or if your given picture has some terms in it, like if something is written on it, they might also expect you to uh, find the odd one out of the given words. Okay, so these are the types of questions. You can't really fix the image that's going to come, right? So the very common type of questions that can be expected for observation would be these, okay, which will be relevant to any kind of picture they give. So I just put out like 2-3 questions over here. Now find the odd one out. Now, for example, if you take this particular image, here, let's say I add you can actually take this coffee cup also as an odd one out. These are all stationary items, right? So these are all things that are not edible. You can put it that way also. All the other things are not edible except for that coffee thing, right? So that would be the odd one out in the given picture. They can even ask you to enter the answer saying that which out of the given image is not appropriate, which one has to be taken out, something like that, right? The format of the question can vary accordingly, but what you need to notice is will be that. And another thing that I would notice is, as you can see, there are like three different color scissors, and you have like two wallets, and these paint tubes that are there has been scattered, and the color majorly, like the bigger ones, are like green and pink. So I would note down all these. Okay, in an image like this, which has a scene that is being displayed to you, um, first thing would be these things that are written, because you don't have much of text in it. There are like 2-3 names here that I would look at. And next thing is I will look at this, because as you can see, all other places the windows are just windows, but here you have some elements on each window. So it's possible for me to change that and ask you to identify whether everything is correct or not. Or I can remove something and ask you to enter, like, maybe take this out and ask, what was there in that particular window? Was it a shower, or was it a candle or a bulb, whatever it is, right? And then the colors of the cars, and how many kids that you can evidently see walking across. Okay, so these are all things that you need to pay attention to when you look at the images. Okay, now coming to edge. So like Dion said, on DQ edge, these are the, so you will have multiple tabs. Okay, the first tab, it says practice set. So here you will find questions related to whatever topics we just discussed for now. So all those topics, you will have only questions relevant to those topics alone. Okay, put up as practice. So these are all images and questions related to observation, the 30 seconds format, memory based questions. And then each topic, like each subject, has its own set of practice questions. The next thing would be the mock test. So when you come under the mock test, there are around 10 mock tests put up for the NATA 2021 attempt. Okay, so these 10 mock tests will have a combination of all the different types of questions. Okay, NAT, MSQ, NCQ, even preferential type questions. Okay, along with that, it is not completely based on the first attempt alone. Okay, first attempt patterned, unexpected, expected questions that can come, predicted questions that can come up for your second attempt. Everything has been put up in the 10 mock tests. Okay, I'll just show the different types of questions that are there, and I'll hand it over to Surendra sir. Yeah, so this is what I meant by the situational type questions. So there is a scenario given to you, and then they ask you, they give you to mention the situation also, and there is a question asked, based on the given situation. So you are supposed to understand the entire scenario and what exactly is the situation given to you with respect to that scenario, what is what they're asking you to do, like what they're asking you to find out from there is what you need to answer. So here, as you can see, this is a multiple select question. So I can choose more than one option, like depending on the given options, not necessary for situational or analytical question. It has to just be one option, right? Okay, so that's one thing. Next thing would be NAT. Yeah, so NAT questions are where like very strictly it would be, okay, good that remembered. So when you're doing NAT questions, okay, if your calculation gives you a decimal value, please enter it along with the decimal value. Okay, if the final answer is just giving you like 2 decimal points, it's okay, add both of them, don't round it off. You have to round off your decimals only if it exceeds 4 units. Okay, if it is like 3 or more than 3 decimal values that you get, you round it off into 2 and put it up. If not, please enter it as it is, don't round off in general. Okay, another thing that you need to remember when you're doing mathematical calculations, if you are going to round off a decimal value in the beginning of your calculation, let's say you start off with 3.14 as the value, it means you have rounded off the value to 14 in the beginning itself. So throughout your calculation, all your decimals has to be rounded off to 2. Like every step that you take the decimals, you cannot. So initially you start off with 3.14, and then the next step, you get a decimal value which has like 5 digits in it. You substitute it as it is, there will be a mismatch in the calculation. This is a common tip for any math questions. Okay, so if you are not planning to round off the values, don't do it from beginning. Like we do it in calculators, no, we usually don't round it off, we'll just add the values and go ahead, right? Which means you're not rounding off any of it, so the value will be even more appropriate, like proper. But if you are rounding off at the beginning, do it throughout. Every step you get a decimal, please do the same number of round off. One, you will round it off to 2, the second one you'll round it off to 4, and the third one you'll round it off to 6. That's not valid. Okay, so make sure you follow the same pattern, only then your answer will be correct. Okay, so yeah, so include your decimals also. Another thing is, I am not really sure how the NAT works in your exam, like the exam portal that you're going to take. I don't know if they also let you enter the units. Okay, generally they give it in the bracket, or it is understood that if I write it as 10, it means that it is 10 centimeters, so it's okay. But if you have the option of entering the units, please enter the units as well, just to be sure. But like whoever's attempted the test on Edge would know, when we say NAT, you don't have the option of entering any variables or letters in it. It's strictly numbers, right? So for this, it is understood by default that it is of the same units as the question. But in your exam, whether they mention it or not, just type and see if you can enter the letters. Please enter the units. Don't miss it out. Okay. So that's about NAT, MCQ, and MSQ. Let me look for, I think the preferential choice, when Surendra sir explains, I'll show it to you again. Now, some of y'all are saying it is locked. It is, the first one is free. After that, all of them would be locked. So these two are actually free. So all of y'all should be able to attempt both these tests. Okay, so please log in and choose the course as NATA and click on take test. Under All India mock test, you'll have the access to strategy test and NATA mock test 1 as well. So these two are free tests, which has 125 questions and 200 marks you can attempt. Again, similarly, there's past year paper, under past year paper section, you have the first attempt NATA April 2021. You can do this as well. Plus, if you guys want to practice more questions relevant topic, you can also choose to practice under the practices. Okay, so this was totally about the practice mock test and all that. Now, if you want to refer to the content, like if you want to understand the topics better, you can actually go through the contents that are available under the learn section. So each of this, like if you click under each subject, you have the topics and quizzes available. You can just go through them and practice as well. Okay. I'm pretty sure all of you all are prepared by now. So I would really suggest you guys take up mock test and try to understand where you're lacking, like what you need to revise to. That would be much more helpful. Okay. Yeah, so that's it from my end. So if you guys have any questions with whatever we discussed so far, you guys can ask. Any questions, guys?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
do we need to prepare 11th and 12th math like how it was asked in 2018, 2019 NATA?
Not necessary. I would say it's not necessary because majorly they asked questions related to geometry, and that's what your brochure says, the new pattern that was released. So it's not necessary, but even if they do ask, I feel like it would more be like, whatever you've prepared, like it could be basic questions like what is the different types of matrices, or how to find the determinant value, something like that, which might not require additional efforts to be put in. They'll keep it very, very simple as such, not very complicated calculus questions and all that. It would be because even in 2018, 2017, they didn't ask much of those JE type of questions, so definitely not. Okay, so it would be much more simpler in that case.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Ma'am, is it key sensitive for the questions where we need to enter? I don't think so. I don't think so. It's case sensitive for here on DQH, so it's not. The exam also, it is not. It should not be, because if it is case sensitive, then unnecessarily you lose marks. So they generally won't put it up. But you guys also please keep in mind, whenever you're entering any noun, irrespective of what the answer is, if it is a noun, please make it into capital and then the smaller letters. So you guys also don't lose any marks. Okay. One
All right, I'm not sure if Meghna has gone blank. or whether it's my internet connection.
Oh,
We can't
am I
hear.
audible?
All right, now you are. Now
Yes,
you
you
are
are.
audible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think there was some network issue. I lost connection. I don't know if I'll be able to share my screen, but anyways, I'm about to finish, so I'll just finish it off. So yeah, I was saying when it comes to the time related thing, uh, don't start off with math questions. This is like my personal suggestion to all of y'all, because we never know how much time we actually take in order to solve the math questions. So we lose track of time, and it will just add up later. So if you see throughout the paper, like I said, you'll hardly have like 5 to maybe 6 questions maximum, or let's just say even if it is like 10 questions out of 125, 10 questions are still less, right? So the rest 115 is also even more important than the 10 that you have here. So I would really suggest keep it, save it. If you are definitely right, like you don't need much time, you know the answer, please go ahead. But if you feel like you're not confident enough to answer it at that particular time, I would suggest please keep it aside, finish the rest of it, and then come back to it. So that way, even if you lose, you're going to lose those 5 questions and not the 115. Okay. You'll have enough time to solve them also at the end. So please make sure you plan the method of solving accordingly. Okay. I think somebody asked a question. Let me just. Any other questions?
Yeah, Meghna, if I can just interrupt here.
Yeah.
So on DQ Edge, if you click on this Learn section and you come right
Mhm.
down to the bottom, you will find something called a syllabus heat map. Meghna, did you cover this aspect?
This is what I explained actually as the weightage of
Yeah, yeah. So
questions, but
related to
here
the
they do have the number of questions. Yeah.
yeah, so related to the specific number of questions for mathematics, um,
Mhm.
look at this. If you see, there are 13 questions and probably 5 questions in mathematics and 5 questions in physics. So what happens is it's a
Correct.
total of 18 questions out of 125 questions. Um, so that's about 15% of the overall paper. But in terms of marks, this it's probably less than in the range of
Yes.
10% to 15%. So
Yeah.
putting in from a strategy perspective, putting in your effort in mathematics or physics would be too vast, um, to really focus on over the next couple of days. So what we do suggest is that what's happened in mathematics, you've already studied this for your board exams or your regular exams. The the opportunity for you to score in subjects like English and mental ability and probably visual spatial ability and all the others is so much more, that you may as well spend your time focusing on the others as opposed to focusing on mathematics. um, Maybe just revise mathematics a little bit, but not more than that.
Yeah. See, to add on to it, see, with whatever preparation that you guys have done so far, I'm pretty sure the questions that will come up is easily answerable. Physics, no doubt, it's just, looking at the question and answering it. So it's fine. But mathematics is also very easy to answer. But the reason why I said keep it aside and do it at the end is this. Like you might not be completely prepared, or you might not have expected questions of that format. But if it turns out to be in your paper, yeah, and you still start solving them, it is possible for you to get into that zone where my answer is right or not right, and that confusion which will start reflecting on the rest of the 110 questions that are left. Okay, so please, whatever you're doubtful of, keep it aside, do the rest, and then come back to it. Okay, that's something that I would really suggest to all of y'all with any topic, especially in case of math. Okay. Yeah. So any other questions that you guys have, or if not, I think Surendra sir can take over. Is it better to enter the unit along with the value? Yes. If you have the option of entering the units, please do add it up, like square centimeter, centimeter cube. Please do enter it along with the value for your own safety. Whether they count it with your answer or not, it's better to have it. Usually NAT, they will restrict it to only numbers. They won't allow you to add letters, but in case if they do, it's always better you add it up. And then do we have any shortcut for counting figures? This is something that I've already mentioned. So when you're doing any kind of counting questions, please break the given image into different different categories, maybe, if you have to call, as in, see, if it's about counting straight lines, okay, break it down into horizontals, verticals, then do the slanted lines. So even when you're doing slanted lines, left to right, right to left separately. So when you break them down and then count it, totally when you add it together and put it, it's easier. But instead of breaking it down, if you just keep counting with the given image, it's possible for us to get confused and miss out on the lines. So that's one thing. This applies to the geometrical shapes also, let it be squares, triangles. So they always start in an order of counting the first individual triangles first, and then move on to two at a time. Maybe I'll show it to you here. Now if I have to count the triangles over here, as you can see, I have like this 1, 2, 3 triangles are there. Oh, sorry, I'm not actually sharing the screen. 1 second. Okay, I'll just say it. Maybe you guys can try to apply that concept when you're solving. So when you're doing counting of triangles, count the individual smaller triangles first, and then when 3 or 2 are clubbed together, it will form a bigger triangle. So that would be the next one. So when you go to smaller to larger or larger to smaller, that's up to you. But when you go in an order, it's always easy for you to not miss out on any. Okay, that is one logic or trick that you can apply. Yeah, so I think Surendra sir can take over. If any other questions are there, we can discuss in the end of the session.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm just trying to understand if I'm very much audible. Meghna or someone can confirm.
Yes, Surendra, you're audible.
Okay, if there is any disturbance or background noises, let me know. You can feel free to interrupt me.
Sure.
Is there any way you could speak closer to the mic, Surinder?
I'm actually using a headphones. Yes, is it better now?
It's a little drowned out.
Is it better now?
Possibly. Maybe if you can speak a little louder, it would probably be better.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, sure.
Thank you.
I'll try to be. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, guys. Good evening, everyone. So, welcome to the presentation, and I hope everyone is already prepared. And let this be the last leg advices that we give you. And let me go ahead with the presentation. After introducing myself, my name is Surender. I'm a practicing architect, and I also am a professor.
You may need to share your presentation, please.
Yeah, yeah. Is it visible now?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah, okay. So my name is Surender. I'm a practicing architect. I'm also a professor at DQ Labs. I mentor students, and like I'm going to take you through the last leg preparation for NATA that you'll be writing on Sunday. So I'll be covering topics on architecture awareness, architecture anatomy, whatever is left over by Meghna. I'll try to cover as much topics as possible. And I'll also give some glimpses on time management and the strategies to follow up in the exams. Okay, so to start with the expected questions. So these are the major categories that you will find the questions in, apart from the visual spatial and mental spatial ability and the mathematics question. So topics very close related to art and architecture.
Surinder,
Yeah.
there seems to be some two things. One is some background noise, and also the mic is not very clear, so you may have to speak a little louder.
Okay, let me sort out another headphone. Just a moment. Just Siddharth. Hello. Is the background noise better now?
The background noise is better, but you may have to speak a little louder. That's all.
Okay.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. To talk about the expected questions in architecture awareness, so I'll be telling in detail, and I'll be going through it category wise, and I'll be showing the study material that's available in DQ Edge as well. So let me just go through the topics first. It will be questions related to architecture awareness, and under which we'll be having questions on architecture anatomy, where we'll be showcasing the elements, different elements of architecture, and there will be a few questions on based on material knowledge, materials used in architecture. There will be a few questions on color theories, and few questions based on color theories and colors. Other major categories are, like depending on art movements. So I think students are already familiar with all the art movements, the painters and the artists and everything. And recent inclusions are a few questions that's based on current affairs. So this remember that these need not be necessarily related very closely to architecture. These can be some questions that is, like remotely related to architecture, but then like something on current affairs. With this last 2 years, I mean 1.5 years being predominantly all the news being happening, like revolving around COVID, we can expect a lot of questions related to that. And the other things are general knowledge based in architecture and a few architecture trivia, and the other categories are brands and logos. So So in architecture awareness, we will be revolving around topics that is related to famous buildings around the world. So that can start with monuments around the world, like historically important monuments around the world, monuments in India, and some world records in architecture. By world records, I mean, some very important architecture trivias, like, like this is the tallest building in the world, the largest stadium, and stuffs like that. And famous buildings of 21st century. In the last few years, question papers we have seen that very recent happenings in the fraternity of architecture based on the buildings has been predominantly asked in the questions. And styles and architecture and art will be one of the major predominant things that they might ask you. So so these are the typology. Let me share a question paper and relate all these typologies that I'm trying to tell you. So the typologies of questions that will be asked will be something that is related to identify the picture to the name. So they'll give you a picture and you have to relate it to a name in a multiple choice question. Identify the picture to a creator. So it can be, like a picture of a building that relates to an architect, or, like a painting to an artist. And then it will be like identify the picture that relates to the style or any specific keywords that relates to that particular picture. So related to its name or any other keywords, like it can be the era, like let's say it's in the medieval era or something like that, or specific to some kind of very specific explanation that will pertain to that picture. And then it will be like description and identification, where they will not give a picture, where they will be giving you the entire description that they are trying to make you visualize what they are trying to tell, and then they will ask you to identify the answer. And it can be a missing detail in a description as question. So they'll give you a long sentence where there will be one missing detail related to architecture or art or any color theory, and they can ask you. So these are the typologies of question. And identify things by historical importance. These are, like something extra which might not go in depth. So identify or explanation by facts, or a question based on recent changes or news. So to relate to all these words, let me just show you the question papers that we like recently as an example. So as you see, this is the first category. These are the architecture elements like building anatomy. So this is like a picture show and tell kind of question. I hope it's visible to everyone. I'm actually showing the Word document. Is it visible? Hello. Hello. Okay. So this would be a very typical question where they show the picture and ask you to identify. So this is an architecture anatomy related question where it's a picture show and tell kind of question. Also, this question is based on that. Uh, so this question is where they give you the description and they ask you to choose between this question. So these are the typologies of, I'm just trying to, browse through the typologies of questions that might be asked. And later on, let me revisit and tell you how to prepare for it, as the last like preparation. So these are the typologies of question which you can easily classify or see through, see it when you go through the mock-up test. So these are descriptions and then identify kind of questions. Again, description and identify. So all these questions will be majorly based on knowledge based and very less by elimination method. Description mostly will be knowledge based and very less based on elimination methods. So beware of that. And again, the picture and show and tell. So a few trivias that is related to architecture. These are who is called as the father of modernism. So all these kinds. So how do you get familiar with these? Are like when you go into so under this category, you might also find the different styles given in architecture. So each one, if you try to go through all this, you will pretty much get the basic knowledge of different styles that is existing in architecture. There will also be information about some architects, not in the historic ones, but then in the modern ones, there will be a few familiar names that you can get yourself familiar with. Alternatively, there will also be information that's available inside famous architects and works. So you can browse through this and find these information. So who coined the phrase "less is more"? All this information, it is closely related to architecture trivias. So picture and tell kind of this thing. So, historically important, monuments. Related to, they'll show you an image and ask you to relate it to the style of architecture or art that is being given here. And these are like historically important famous skyscrapers. Alternatively, they can ask you also questions related to, okay, this is the tallest building in India. What is the name of this tallest building in India or something like that. So it will be either you relate the picture to the answer or you relate the fact. Relate the fact that is being given into the question into the answer. So it will be either of these. Famous quotes by architects. So this is based on the color theory. I'm sure that you would have gone through all this color theory. And very important thing is that a few questions that they ask, you might think that they are straightforward questions that you can answer based on the knowledge that you have gained from these lessons that you took. But you have to pay attention to the question because it might be a little bit, there will be a very minor word that changes the meaning of the entire question. Where there is a possibility where the question negates what it's trying to ask. Try to choose what is not a warm color or something like that. So pay attention to the question very, very clearly. You might think is the very easiest of the question might be a very big challenge. I mean, they would have hidden a very big challenge because they are not going to give you the straightaway answer. Like they will try to test if you are paying attention to the question. Really. So this is one type of this thing. Let me also share the other. So this is relating to the picture kind of question. But if you see this, the first one, okay, I'm not going to give the answer for this, but I'm just going to run through the typologies, famous typologies. So if you see cubism, they have given the question that is related to cubism, and they want you to relate the artwork to the architecture building that you see here. So you know the concept that is behind the artwork, and then they ask you to choose between these choices in the picture again. So relating artworks to architecture, I hope you know the important relationship between the paintings and architecture, because every time there is a new type of painting movement, or like cubism, modernism, or like symbolism, constructivism, anything that happens in the art world or in the architecture world, it is reflected in the other. I mean, it is like two sides of a coin. There's a new type of painting style that is evolving. All the architects will try to like follow the same style, because it is a particular era. This is how it usually operates. So you can very well relate a painting to the architecture building that's coming at that time. So this is pop related art. You have to relate it to the building here, either by the principles or by identifying its style. Or you can also do it by elimination method, like Meghna told before. Okay, the same kind of same pattern of question. So these are logo related questions that you see here. So these might be very, very tricky, because all four, I mean, if they have given you the Microsoft symbol that has four different types of shapes, you can easily identify. So paying attention to the details in a logo is what has been, taken here. Choose the odd brand out. It might be either, see, all these three are F&B related, and this is a car logo. So it can be either by that logic, or like it can be a very different logic where like it has some historical importance where all three of them are tied up together, or something like that. So getting familiar with brands and logo is a very important part as well. And yeah, the correct logo. And these can be really, I mean, this is a pretty straightforward question, but like the complexity of this question can get more complex, like the Microsoft question. Okay, so what was easy can be a little bit more tough with the details. Okay, this is a question where you identify the silhouettes to the skyline. So most of it, get familiar with the skylines, because given that you're going to write an architecture entrance exam, try to just Google up the skylines of all the famous cities. I'm not asking you to, like memorize it, like to every little detail. Just try to understand how each and everything looks. And by this question, you can easily answer it by elimination method. So this is the skyline of New York. You see the Lady Liberty here. This is the like the building silhouettes of Rome. You see the Colosseum here, and this is London. You see the Big Ben. I think it is London. I'm not very sure. But this is Shanghai. You can identify by its iconic this TV tower. So there will be one iconic building. There will be one iconic building where like you can easily identify that building, and it will be in the skyline. It will be very easy to identify the skyline. So either do it by elimination method, or you can do it by identifying one big element. Because by seeing this Lady Liberty, I can easily tell that this is silhouette of New York skyline, right? Guys, am I audible? Hello. Hello.
Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. So, and this picture that is, like closely related to identifying the principles that's relating to the pictures. I'm very sure that you have seen a lot of patterns that's been given in the study material. So there will be questions based on, like what is the the rule or the geometric pattern, the name of the geometric patterns that's been shown in the picture. So there will be these kind of questions on and out again. And yeah, and also you have to be, like a little bit updated with the latest logo. I'm very sure that they will be showing you a logo that, like come across every day or very familiar with. So there is not much of a mistake that's to be made there. But knowing them better is always the best option, like going through all this. Okay, so in this question, as I mentioned before, pay attention to the question because it is a negation question where they have asked you and use the word not. In the question paper, there are good possibilities that it might not be highlighted like this, and it might be, like hidden inside this. And when you see the word golden ratio and you see the first or the second answer right, you immediately jump into excitement and think like, yeah, this is an easy answer. Let me answer it straight away. So do not do that. Go through the question very, very, like thorough, and then try to answer it. Logo of a news channel. Like in this question, they have asked you what is the color scheme used in this logo of a news channel. So you have to, relate this to the color wheel, and how this is it a monochromatic color scheme? No. You can always, depend on elimination methods for this as well, and try to, shortlist the answers and then come up with an answer. So, very, very important part of what I'm trying to present here is the questions like this. I think it's called this the PCQ questions, if I'm not wrong. So these questions will be questions that will ask you. I think it's been popping up for the last couple of years. So they'll give you a picture and they will ask you to choose the two most important visual principles. Two most, you have to pay attention to this word again, like in this question, two most important. And if you relate all these words to the picture, original picture, you can actually come up with the answer. And like this, there are like eight answers here. So 8 answers, you need to choose two most important and relevant one. See, the tricky part is this. Since it's a PCQ question, you know how it works. I think students know how the PCQ questions already work. So there will be multiple non-wrong answers. And the most relevant answer is the most correct answer, which will be awarded the highest of marks. So this will be like, if you see, they have asked you the principles. Okay. So by elimination method, I can say that flow and intricacy, flow and intricacy is not a type of visual principle. Okay. Whereas rhythm, hierarchy, focal point, contrast, repetition, and continuity, these are principles. So what do these each word relate to the most of this? This is totally up to you. You have to be very careful in choosing what word relates to the most by the scale of what it is. So let's run through the word rhythm. Where all do I see rhythm? Is it the predominant and the most important one in this? No, rhythm might be a part of the answer, but it is not the one of the most predominant one. Next one is, let me choose the word contrast. Is contrast a very predominant principle in this? Yes, because they have shown monochrome and they have made, like the other one in contrast in colors, popping it out from the original one. So contrast is a very, very important visual principle in this. And like there, it can also be a focal point. There is continuity also. There is continuity in the shapes. There is repetition in the shapes. There is the focal point. This is the focal point that is highlighted by a contrast. There is also hierarchy in the shapes. So be very careful in the words that you choose. Multiple answers can relate to the picture that is shown, but choose the two most important ones. So that is the importance of this question. Any doubts in this part? Can I run through the doubts just for this part because it's pretty complex.
So will this image have focal point?
Sorry.
Will this image have focal point?
Yeah, it will have focal point. See, again, the point that I'm telling you, it also has hierarchy, it also has repetition, it also has continuity. So what I'm trying to tell here is there are multiple right answers, but pay attention to the question that two most important visual principles. So as I said before, I'm not going to give you the answer. Okay. So I'm just trying to train you to, like understanding what the questions are going to be like. So what I would suggest you is like go through this. Maybe Meghna at the end of this meeting can show that you can practice these questions, these type of questions, to get yourself acquainted with what is expected, and there will also be the right answers that's given there. So you can relate to each word, which is the most right answer, and which is the next to the right answers. Okay, there are a lot of non-wrong answers as well. Okay, so that is the point that I'm trying to make. I hope I clarified your doubt. Okay, if there are no more doubts, shall I? I'm going to just move on to the next one. Odd man out again. Okay, again, figure tends to plus figure support. Okay, they are just trying to ask you the principles behind this, like the advertisement one. So is it figure ground perception, similarity, closure, or proximity? Okay, so these kind of questions, I think you need to, like be very aware of, because there might be multiple answers that you feel that it is right, that will, like confuse you. For instance, proximity relates to this, closure also relates to this, figure ground perception also relates to it. So you have to be very careful in choosing the right answer. Okay, I think these are general knowledge questions, as I was telling before. General knowledge questions, and like the trivias that you can find in the GK section. Okay, visual connectivity to the trivias or the information that's being given to you. Getting more technical. Yeah. So get yourself very much acquainted with the principles that is behind design. So like the Fibonacci series or the golden ratios and everything. Try to get yourself acquainted with all the trivias that is about it, because there is a very good very good chance that they might ask you a question out of it. So this is a pretty much straightforward answer that you can relate to if you're very good in English. So these are questions that might possibly be asked as an alternative to your sketching part. So since we don't have sketching part due to this COVID, so they might show you a picture and they might ask you to decode it. So it is a part of my presentation later on, so I'll explain in detail about it. For now, I'll just tell you the category that it might fall into. They'll give you a sketch, and they will try to, like out of the sketch, they will try to ask questions which will test your ability. So if the sketching would have happened, like will you have been able to do the sketching in perspective correctness and proportion correctness? So there might be a lot of questions that's like as an alternative to sketching might pop up. So these questions can be very unique and new. So basically, these are not technical questions, but these are questions that will make them understand if you have actually understood the concepts of sketching. So again, questions that's in PCQ types. Again, the PCQ questions. So if you see all these questions, all the words that's been given here will relate to this one, right? Paradigm shift, yes. Focal point, yes. Contrast, maybe yes. Symmetry, no, it does fall under radial symmetry, but it is not a very good example, best example of radial symmetry. There is direction. There is a little bit of radial balance here and there, but it is not the best one to choose. And there is, yes, of course, repetition, like repetition of patterns here and there. So you have to choose the two most important ones here. Same thing, instead of patterns and pictures, they can also show you a building or an interior and ask you to relate the most common one here. Here, symmetry is a very important major factor here. So all these kind of questions. So possibly a picture that is an existing building or something like that. They show, the most famous building by Antonio Gaudi, and like you can ask a question, the principles in which it was designed on as well. Same applies here. Okay, getting acquainted to coming back to the art movements and everything. Maybe you can, go through all the types of isms, the different art movements and architecture style movements, and when you Google it, you can find what each one is about. So this will will give you the basic idea of to choose what does not fall under. So mostly, if they are asking questions to answer to choose from four given options, it will mostly be it will be a negative answer where you have to find the odd man out two times. Okay, so the other three will be similar, and one odd man out will be easier to find. The other way question is a very rare occurrence where they ask you like which of the following questions, following paintings falls under impressionism, where you have to find the one question, one art that relates to impressionism. That might be a little bit of rare occurrence, but we cannot give a chance to that. So get yourself educated with all the details possible. Okay, again, same kind of questions. That's for another style. Odd man out in the graphical, this thing that we have shown, graphical language. Relating the painting, relating the picture to the creator, kind of question here. And again, same kind of questions where you relate the picture to the principles. So let me jump back to, I think the rest of it is almost similar type of this thing. So let me jump back to these typologies. So alternative questions that might be expected are, I think I covered it up pretty much in that question paper that I just showed you. So pictures and design principles can be the question, like I said, like I told, like in the PCP questions. GK questions that is sub-related to the current affairs. So that might be a very alternative expected question where you have to keep yourself educated with what's happening around your current affairs. And okay, by this what I mean, similar question ballpark in different format of question. See, the same question, same type of question, they might ask it in a different format. For example, it might be negative question, or it might be, the question might be twisted, but the answer might be a little bit straightforward of what you already know. This is, a typical typology of question where they try to, confuse you, and then you get the clarity. After there will be, 3-4 sentences of question, and there will be, only the last sentence of the question will be the actual question. So these kind of questions. So these are, alternative formats of questions. And a few questions that's from maths and physics, and that is out of syllabus, as Meghna told before. It can be something from the really early stages of science and mathematics. So possible replacement for sketching, it can be pictures and design principles. Like I showed before, they can show you an entire perspective sketch that you trained yourself to sketch for, and they can ask you the design principles that's behind it. Alternatively, they can ask you to, questions related to sketching terminologies, where they show you a picture and ask you what type of perspective it is. These are all possibilities because they are replacing sketching this year. So these are all possibilities. So they might show you a sketch and ask like what type of perspective it is, what is the principles behind it. and it can work the other way as well. And choose the right perspective visually. They might give you 4 visually similar sketch, and there might be a slightly, wrong perspective in 3 sketches, and they might ask you to choose one sketch that is with all perspective correctness and proportion correctness. So this might be an alternative question. And the terminologies breakdown where they ask you, there will be a sketch and they can, ask you to label it. I mean, they will label it A, B, C, and D, and you have to relate A, B, C, and D to the terminologies. You have to break down these terminologies and stuff like that. So mark the parts of sketching, like I told before, the terminologies and the sketching, these both are same. Identifying the mistakes in a sketch, there is a good possibility where they give you a sketch and ask you to identify the mistakes that's appearing there. I'm not sure which format it might be included in. This is a possibility which you are already trained for, so you need not worry much about that. Okay, this can be a really interesting, and they ask you to relate it to a concept or concept or ideology behind the evolution of that particular poster or design. So these can also be in MCQ or MSQ questions or PCQ question related questions as well. So it can be an entire poster that they can ask you to choose the concept and ideologies behind that poster. So getting to the point of time management. So you're supposed to answer 125 questions in 180 minutes, which gives you an average of 1.44 minutes on an average to each question. But there are different categories of questions, each questions will take different amount of time, of course. So remember this as the thumb rule, and I'm just showing this slide shown by Meghna there. The subject weightage as per the first attempt. So you might want to note this down. Which one is the most important, the category or the subject that will require a lot of things. I mean, a lot of attention. So a general advice would be spend ample time in reading the question paper first and grasping it. It is a very important thing. This is a way to manage your time. Maybe spend the first 10 minutes in understanding what the question paper is like. There are 125 questions. Just graze through maybe in the first 5 to 10 minutes. And before you start answering them from top to bottom, understand each and every question. If you are, my strong suggestion is that you need not spend more than 2 minutes on any question. If your question is taking more than 2 minutes or 3 minutes max, or 120 seconds max, let's say it's a very complicated mathematics question. If you feel like it is going to take more of your time, you can actually mark it as a gray area and move further and revisit it later. This can be a strategy that you can adopt, or alternative strategies I'm going to tell in the coming slides. So do not spend more than 2 or 3 minutes on on a particular question. A few questions might be really tricky, which takes more than 3 minutes, or it takes even more than 5 minutes or something, especially the mathematics part. But I'm telling 3 minutes so that you subconsciously remember that you should not spend more than this stipulated time on that one particular question. So that because you will not have the sense of time when you're trying to solve a mathematical problem, it will keep on dragging. Okay, so the major strategy before you start with the exam is that you have, as I displayed here, I usually have 3 suggestions, or I categorize these questions as 3 categories. Okay, so the first ones are the really tough ones that take a lot of time and effort to arrive at the answer. I mean, you have to put in a lot of formulas, you have to calculate and then arrive at the answer. So typically questions that's from physics and mathematics will come under this category, where you have to spend a lot of time and effort, and also you have to spend a lot of mind into answering that particular question, getting the answer for that particular question. So the category 2 questions are relatively easier questions, but takes time and a lot of concentration from your end. Okay. So for example, questions from visual spatial ability, like count the number of squares, what is the mirror image of this, what is the reflection image of this, what is the top view of this particular shape or something. So this does require time, but a lot of concentration. But that it is relatively easier to the category 1 because there is, it either works by elimination method or by applying logic. There is no formula or anything like that involved here. Category 3 questions are the direct questions, like if you know the answer, you know the answer kind of questions. For example, general knowledge questions and English questions. And there are a few that will not follow in this category of questions where you have to spend a lot of time and it will be a part of category 3, but you have to spend a little bit more time. Like you will not get the answer on the first visual of it. Okay, so I will categorize it under category 3 right now because it's much easier to go with the flow. So examples like general knowledge related questions and English related questions will fall under category. So the sequence, the suggestion that I have in which sequence to answer this question is that spend the first, 5 to 10 minutes in reading all these questions, all the 125 questions, just graze through all these questions so that you can easily categorize between these 3 categories. Okay, you need not read all the questions top to bottom, but with one single glance, you can understand actually if it is falling within category 1, 2, or 3, right? It is very easy to classify that. So spend the first 5 or 10 minutes in trying to understand your question paper, trying to grasp the question paper. You have 180 solid minutes, so this is not going to be a waste of time. I assure you that. And then start by answering category 3. But remember this, you need not submit these as the final answer. I'm not very sure how it might work technically. You can, note down that this is the right answer somewhere else, or you can, mark it as a gray color, this thing. I'm not very sure. Maybe Meghna can throw light on it later on. But do not take that as the the final answer. You have to revisit these questions. Remember that. So answer category 3 first, but do not submit it as the final answer. And then go ahead with doing, category 2. Concentrate, spend as much time in category 2 and answer these questions. And then with the rest amount of time that you have, you will have all the time in the world for category 1. You need not panic. You can, go ahead, be very relaxed and answer category 1. Spend ample time in it, but keep the last 15 to 20 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, or 15 to 20 minutes. Suppose there's 125 question, so you can keep 15 to 20 minutes to revisit all the answers and review what you have given and submit it. Review it one final time before you submit the answer. So this is a very, very important thing. So plan your time accordingly. Spend 160 minutes in doing all the first 4 steps. The last 20 minutes has to be for the final step that I'm telling you. You have to revisit. So this is when you actually answer the category 3 questions and submit the final answers. So yeah, and very important thing is that see, if you go in the sequence of category 1, 2, and then 3, which is predominantly how your question paper is going to be structured. They'll give you the category 1 where you have to apply a lot of logic, time, and effort. This will be the first, 10 or 20 questions. There is a good chance that it might be shuffled as well. But predominantly, the NATA papers that I've seen in the recent times, they had this first category questions in the top band, and then it goes to the category 2, and then goes to category 3. What typically happens when you answer it in the sequence of category 1, 2, and 3 is that when you answer category 1, and if you don't get the right answer that is being given in the multiple choice question, you obviously start panicking. Okay, like let's say it's a mathematics question where you have to choose between 4 choices, and you do not get the you applied the formula, you spent like solid 2 or 3 minutes in answering it, and then you see the answers, all the 4 options are not the answer that you got, so you start panicking and you spend more time on it as well. When you start panicking, the next question, everything is going to get carried over until you finish the 10 questions, and still this pressure on you or this panic on you will be inside your head. It will not let you concentrate for category 2, obviously. So category 2, which requires a lot of concentration, like counting the number of squares or triangles or circles, or what is the top view, what is the mirror image, which requires a lot of concentration. By the panic that you got from category 1, you will unintentionally make a mistake in category number 2. You might miss out counting a square. You might like miss out a line in the mirror image when you're doing it by elimination method or something. So this is going to carry over to category 2. And when you go to category 3, your mind will be really busy thinking about how tough the question paper is, whereas it will be actually very easy if you strategize properly. And category 3, where you have to apply your already existing knowledge in terms of English, you will start getting doubts in the question and answers. Like all the answers, all the options will start looking very familiar. You will get confused more and more, and this is not the right way to go about. Okay, so this is the strategy that I would highly recommend. Go from this to that. I mean, category 3, 2, and then to 1. But first of all, read all the questions and classify the categories. And the most important advice of all, I'll be ending my presentation with this: do not panic, because it is not going to be useful in any way. It is just going to be counterproductive from top to bottom. If you start panicking, if you start feeling insecure, this is a competitive exam. Be very, very relaxed. Yes, of course, your life is going to be dependent on it, but do not panic, because it does not help at all. So be relaxed, do whatever you want to do before the exam, to be very relaxed. Take it very, very casually, take it like a fun ride or something, but at any cost, do not panic. Even if you get an answer wrong, or that there is an answer that is wrong hidden inside or something like that, tackle it very cool. Okay, so because it should not carry over to the other questions, and it should not be a perpetual disaster where the following questions face the impact of your panic as well. So that is pretty much it. Any questions that you want to ask?
Yeah. Right, Surinder, there are a couple of questions on the YouTube live chat. There's a question from Ashlesha Bosle. Can we access these materials? Where can we access these materials? Ashlesha, uh, the links to the mock tests are available on DQ Edge. These are created in the framework of the NATA 2021 first attempt. All right. There's another question, and the links will be shared with you either on the chat, or please look into the description. It will be updated there. The second thing is in terms of, will NATA be similar, similar in weightage as the first attempt? Um, uh, so Surinder, I'm not sure if you have any thoughts on this. Do you think it will be similar?
Can I?
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think you will be the right person to answer this.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Meghna.
Yeah. So coming to the weightage of it, I strongly feel there might be slight variations with the weightage. It might not be exact same as how they've given in the first attempt. The reason is, if we compare the first attempt question paper along with the brochure that was given, released initially, it was very much clear that they wanted to make it into a proper aptitude test and have various categories of skill testing happening. That's why those categories are particularly mentioned. So out of few of the topics and concepts, and they just gave it into a certain weightage. So I'm pretty sure the second one will still have the same topics and concepts, but the weightage of the questions will definitely vary. Maybe not on a vast scale. So if there were like 20 questions of English in the first attempt, it could either come down by like 4 or 5, or maybe increase. So that amount of changes will happen, but I'm pretty sure from a learning perspective, as a student, whatever you guys have prepared now, or what you will be preparing for the next 24 hours, will still remain the same. The questions would come up with the same amount of concepts and contents, but the number of questions in each topic, I pretty much sure feel that it will, it will vary slightly. It might not be the exact replica of the first attempt. That much, though, I'm sure.
But the tests are always unpredictable. So
Yeah,
They will also look at it from two angles. One is students' performances will also be compared with the previous NATA test, so they could
yeah,
also keep the difficulty level pretty much the same. Um, but
yeah. To add to that, sorry, Dion.
go ahead, go ahead.
To add to that, see, the difficulty level of NATA paper has always been on the lower end in if I have to compare it to the architecture JE paper 2 paper. Okay. So NATA, even when there was like mathematics and all that included, the level of questions, the difficulty level was always on a medium level. I think the first attempt turned out to be a little difficult to mostly all of the students who took up because they caught you all out of surprise. Like they didn't let you expect the questions that were actually part of the paper. Let it be the riddles or memory type or the geometry questions. Nothing was actually expected because they didn't give any syllabus. There was no sample paper which was given in prior. So it was a complete surprise that resulted in maybe a moderate average performance, or even there are people who got good score, right? So this time also my suggestion is, I don't know, the reason why I'm saying it might not be the same is we will somehow try to give some get some element of surprise in your second paper. We do not know, it's just my prediction. If they do, like how Surendra mentioned, please don't panic. Just expect it so that whatever format of question comes, just be sure that you're prepared with whatever knowledge you have. Using those knowledge only, you're supposed to answer the question. It's not something that would be expected to answer from a master's holder or a PhD holder. It is for your level. So don't panic and read the question properly and be clear headed so that any kind of question that comes, you will be able to answer them. Yeah. Yes, Dion, you can go ahead.
Yeah. There's another question from Ashlesha Bosle, which says, could you please guide on mathematics and physics?
Okay, so mathematics and physics, like I mentioned, and I think I've showed that on DQ Edge also. Dion, if you can scroll down and click on mathematics contents. Sorry, scroll up. So see, mathematics, like I said, they've concentrated on the basic geometry concepts. So if you have your like high school textbooks, math textbooks, 8th, 9th, 10th grade textbooks, just roughly go through the theorems and formulas. See, I'm not saying it would be something out of what you don't know. It was definitely something that we will know. But the reason why I'm asking you to brush up those things is it is possible for us to forget the exact theorem or exact thing. We just know what is Pythagoras theorem because we've been using all this while. But there might be a lot of other theorems which are relevant to triangles or a right angle triangle in particular, right? Which we might not be that very familiar with because we don't use it as regularly as how we do with Pythagoras theorem, right? So for that purpose, just roughly go through it. If not, also it's actually there on Edge, like as you can see on the screen. If you scroll down, all the way down, there's a new module that's been added, which is called geometry. You guys can actually refer through that. It has like a collection of basic definitions and properties related to these 2D objects. Plus, another thing along with this, when it comes to the math section, would be mensuration, which is nothing but area volume related questions, which you can definitely expect. Apart from that, it would again be these quantitative topics, percentages or averages and all that. So if you are already prepared with all these things, well and good. If not, also just find out the formulas, like what is simple interest formula, what is compound interest formula. These basic amount of preparation should do. And coming to physics, see, physics is like not that very vast as how you have to prepare with your 11th and 12th syllabus, but I would suggest the general knowledge, like you can maybe look at it as a general knowledge related to science. They're not asking you current affairs or some design related questions. It's more of a science related question, uh, general questions which are very similar. It's not that very difficult as well. So I would really say don't expect too very difficult level of question and complicate yourself. It is going to be on a simpler level when it comes to science and math as well. Yeah.
All right.
Any other questions?
So
Yeah?
I don't see any more questions coming in. I think this is
Hmm.
pretty much it,
Hmm. I
right?
think there's a question in the chat box. Let me just read it. Suppose if in a riddle, for example, the answer is table, so it is necessary to type the articles as well, like your table or the table. Okay, so see, in your online platform that you're going to take up the exam, I'm not sure how it's going to work. Okay, whether you will it take just the word itself or you have to add the articles or not. Technically only the word should be the answer, because it is possible for us to not add the article, but there might be certain questions where along with the articles or along with, like, it could be like a two-worded answer. For those kind of things, irrespective of what you feel, make sure you add the exact thing. But in this case, like the example that I've given, a table or the table, I would say you add, it doesn't matter. Even if you don't add, it doesn't matter. I'm pretty sure it would be considered as the right answer. But when I think you've got it. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yes, Dion, I'm done.
Okay. All
Can I
right.
just add a quick 2-minute closing note from my end?
Sure.
Yeah, but, sorry, one more question has come. What's a good score in NATA? Okay, as a faculty, I would say target for 200 on 200. That's when at least 180 or 185 plus can be definitely achieved if you target for 200. Your score target should always have a buffer of 5 to 10 marks. So you target for 20 plus, so that you get, even if you go somewhere wrong, you'll still achieve the maximum score. But from college perspective, I think Dion would be the right person to suggest the score.
Right. I'll talk about that. I think every year the median changes. So last year the median was a little on the higher side. The average score was in the 140 range, and of course students of DQ labs, they scored even up to 180, 182. Um, but that was the average last year. This year, in the first attempt, however, the average dropped significantly to about 90, 95 was the average this year. So anyone in that range is in the average group. So anyone higher than 100 is a pretty good score. Um, so ideally, I think for this attempt, you should target at least 120, 130, 140 in those ranges. I think you'll be in the top few, and you'll have a good chance of getting a top rank if you're in those scores. Anything above 120 would be an outstanding score. Yeah. Any other questions before we close? All right. I think that's about it. Thanks so much from the DQ Lab side. Over to Nitte.
Wow, that was
Thank you.
indeed an insightful and inspiring session. We believe all aspects discussed today would be helpful for all the students to perform to their full potential with the NATA exam and realize their dreams. Finally, we would like to thank DQ Labs team, NIA Outreach team, and NITE Institute of Architecture for organizing this workshop, and student parents and participants for actively being a part of it. We wish you all the best for your NATA exam and an exciting career in architecture and built environment. Thank you all and wishing you a great day ahead. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All the
All the
best to
best,
the
guys.
students.
All the best. Yeah.
Namaste.